Part 158. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1571. This is, integrated into the spirit world. Zuyun was shocked, but there was an inexplicable look on his face. He didn't know what would happen if the two worlds came together, but he always had a bad feeling in his heart. Wea, can your magic knife kill these nightmare monsters? Zuyun turned around and pointed at the still-standing nightmare demon. Now the entire Nangong family, except Nangong Xiu, is all dead. No problem, Meng Wei glanced at him and said, my magic sword has killed many extraterrestrial demons before. After the words fell, Meng Wei's figure swayed and he headed towards the open space to kill. At the same time, Zuyun also turned his attention to Nangong Xiu, who was connected with the magic seal. Zuyun. Nangong Xiu has mixed feelings. Because Zuyun killed all her elders in front of her. But this way, it saved her life. Do you have any plans? Zuyun sighed. Nangong Xiu's voice was hoarse, but she couldn't speak and lowered her head slightly. If you have anything to say, just say it and I'll see if I can help you. Zuyun was a little reluctant to give up. He found that the aura on Nangong Xiu's body was dissipating, maybe because he had death intentions. Or, there is no hope for the future. You can't help me. Hearing this, Nangong Xiu raised his head and said, I have the blood of the descendants of extraterrestrial demons in my body. I am still a scourge to this world. Fortunately, you came early. I didn't become a sinner. Zuyun smiled bitterly and said, don't think so, it's just that there are some things that you can't help yourself. At least, you have no evil thoughts in your heart. At this moment, he remembered what Fairy Xianxia said, that Nangong Xiu was taken away by force. It can be seen that Nangong Yin could not convince Nangong Xiu, so he finally used force. It doesn't matter whether you have evil thoughts or not, Nangong Xiu said seriously. Anyway, Zuyun, you have to be careful. Speaking of this, Nangong Xiu looked at Meng Wei and said, these nightmare monsters have the purest blood of extraterrestrial demons. We have human form and are from the lower clan. And they are from the middle clan. Zuyundeo said, so what if they are members of the Zhone clan? Is it possible that they are still immortal? He was a little disapproving, as most of the heaven-gathering thunder talismans had been knocked to the ground. Meng Wei was still using the magic knife to deal with the remaining ones who were still standing. In comparison, the effect brought by the magic knife seems to be stronger than his heaven-gathering thunder talisman. People from the middle clan are not that easy to die. Moreover, I heard from my father that they also have special abilities. In short, Zuyun, just be careful. And I have no need to live. After Nangong Xiu finished speaking, the demon energy all over his body suddenly rose, and then, the bloodline connected to the demon seal was also a big rubber boat with red light. She actually wanted to blow herself up and die at this moment. Xiu! Zuyun exclaimed and wanted to stop it, but it was too late. There were constant clicking sounds inside the magic seal. Zuyun saw with his own eyes that the blood vessels were divided and broken, and the blood seeped into every corner of the magic seal. The dark demon seal soon turned into a blood-red strange thing. Xiu! Zuyun's eyes also turned red. In his heart, Xiu was always like a lady, gentle and not like a female demon cultivator. But now, he committed suicide under his nose. Zuyun, there's only so much I can do, I hope you can have a smooth road to immortality. After saying that, Xiu's head immediately drooped, and there was no sound again. Gradually, the red light on the magic seal also faded away, the blood lost its vitality, and the color also darkened, and finally condensed into a dark red color, blending with the magic seal. Zuyun sighed, and finally put the magic seal away and placed it in the immortal mansion. At this time, Zuyun suddenly heard the roaring waves in the sea with great force. He quickly raised his head and looked towards the spirit world, his expression suddenly became solemn. The Eastern mortal world and the spiritual world are already close at hand. Wei, pay attention. Zuyun reminded him loudly, and Meng Wei quickly looked over. She stopped killing those nightmare statues and waited quietly with Zuyun to see what would happen when the two worlds intersect. At this time, Zuyun also felt that his realm was recovering, and the restrictions by heaven were getting smaller and smaller. From the Yuanying stage to the refining stage, and then to the integration stage. Until, he felt that his realm had returned to its peak, and the East mortal world and the spiritual world were completely connected. Boom! There was a loud noise, the ground shook, and the wild waves in the sea rose to another level, almost reaching the sky. Looking around, he and Meng Wei could see that countless monks in the sky were startled. Boom! 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 Under the sea, there was also a deafening sound, as if the bottom of the sea was connected to the spirit world. The two of them were trying to stabilize themselves so as not to be knocked over by the shock. But suddenly, streams of pure demonic energy followed along with a foul smell. Not good. Zuyun's heart thumped, and he saw many nightmare demons on the ground who had been knocked down by the heaven-gathering thunder talisman, slowly opening their eyes and preparing to get up. Not dead, they're not dead. Meng Wei also shouted in shock, his eyes quickly falling on the nightmare monster she had killed. Fortunately, these were all stabbed to death by the magic knife, and did not stand up like other nightmare monsters. But these numbers are less than 1 in 10, and they do not account for many in this huge group of nightmare monsters. What should I do if the gathering heavenly thunder talisman does not work? Zuyun's mind was spinning rapidly. The extraterritorial demons did not belong to this world, so the means of the spiritual world could not be used. The four-sided divine beast fist could be used. But the problem is that the consumption of the four-sided divine beast fist is too great. Use the immortal soul hammer? It's not impossible, but if you want the immortal soul hammer to cause enough lethality to them, you can only use the power of faith. Or other powers beyond spiritual power. Otherwise, it is estimated that it will be the same as the gathering heavenly thunder talisman, which can only paralyze the opponent at most. Zuyun, how about I kill them one by one? Meng Wei retreated to Zuyun's side. As these nightmare monsters gradually woke up, their eyes slowly gathered around. How long will this killing stop? There are tens of thousands of nightmare monsters. Even if Meng Wei can kill one with one sword, it is estimated that he will not be able to hold on until the vibration between the two worlds stops. By then, these nightmare monsters will scatter, and I am afraid they will be powerless to save the situation. Or, take them all into the universe world? With this thought, Zuyun's mind can no longer be restrained. There seems to be no other way. He fixed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "You watch here first, don't let any nightmare monster escape from this open space and enter the spirit world, leave the others to me." I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1572. Zuyun, what are you going to do? Seeing Zuyun's expression, Meng Wei realized that he was going to make a big move. Take them all into the universe and give them nowhere to escape. Meng Wei shouted in shock, "No." "Why?" Zuyun frowned. Although the way of heaven in the universe is not perfect, it is also a closed world. But these nightmare monsters are full of demonic energy. I am afraid that they will destroy your world and affect your future cultivation. That's not necessary. Zuyun knew Meng Wei's thoughts and interrupted her directly, saying, "With the world tree and the world mountain, there are so many living beings. Unless the world of the universe is completely destroyed, at most there will be just spend more time to restore the universe." He has reason to believe that both the Great Universe World and the Great Universe Glazed Mirror are both supreme immortal treasures that have been destroyed into countless pieces and can eventually be fused back together. Now that I still have the power of my origin, and the rules of the universe are stronger than before, even if the nightmare monsters can destroy them again, so what? Then he took out many spiritual beads in his hand and said, I will use these beads to set up a trap, trap them all here first, and then take them all into the universe world. When the time comes, we will kill them one by one, don't let any nightmare go. Zuyun paused for a moment, with murderous intent in his eyes, and said, Xiu said, Nangongyan told him that all Huangzing's nightmare monsters are here. After killing them, once and for all, we will go forward together. Go to the fairy world. In fact, after solving the nightmare demon, the rest of the evil cultivators will definitely not be able to achieve success. Zuyun can definitely stay in Huangzingzing and continue cultivating. But in order to divert Menghui's attention, he would take the initiative to mention going to the fairy world. Sure enough, Menghui was overjoyed. For her, it didn't matter where she was, what mattered was that she was with Zuyun. Okay, then let's fight at once. Having said that, she gathered the power of the holy demon and locked it tightly at the edge of the eastern mortal realm and the spiritual realm. Whenever a nightmare demon wanted to go to the spiritual realm despite the shaking of the ground, she would not hesitate to do so. Kill it without hesitation. At the same time, Zuyun also took out the spirit beads in his hand one by one. No matter what attributes they were all used at this moment. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, thunder, ice, poison, and even some spirit beads without attributes. These were once named by Zuyun after the Chaos Spirit Pearls, but in the face of such a crisis, he simply couldn't care less. The great formation that was set up was of course also the great formation of stars moving around. These spirit beads will all turn into stars with various attributes in the formation. For Zuyun, this is also a challenge. But he had no other choice. It's not like he doesn't have spiritual stones on him. But he felt that the spirit stones were not enough to trap these nightmare monsters. As for the Lingzhu, he no longer has time to pick out a single attribute. If you have any spiritual beads, just spread them out. Boom. 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 The ground is still shaking, and the waves in the sea are also raging from time to time. Zuyun didn't care at all. He stepped on the longevity secret and arranged the spiritual beads one by one along the boundary of the open space here. Finally, the momentum subsided and the two realms completely merged into one. In the spirit world, many monks have already discovered the strange things here and plan to come over to find out. But suddenly, brilliance appeared everywhere. It was Zuyun who activated the formation, trapping all the nightmare monsters into the star-moving formation. The monks who stayed in the spirit world were not very strong. Seeing such a scene, they were all shocked. They all stopped in the air and looked at this place from a distance. They only saw Menghui, holding the magic knife in his hand, guarding the border tightly. Don't come over. Her red lips opened slightly and she softly uttered these four words. All the monks dared not move. Until, the open space suddenly disappeared in front of their eyes, leaving an open space behind. As the waves crashed, the open space was slowly filled with sea water, forming a huge sea lake. When they came back to their senses, Menghui had disappeared without knowing when. The monks stood there blankly, thinking that they had encountered a strange phenomenon in heaven and earth, and did not dare to step forward for a long time. And in the universe world, countless nightmare monsters roared one after another when they found that they were in a different place and the ground no longer shook. Zuyun will move the entire open space into the world of the universe. And the cost of this is huge. This is not like the barren stone mountain before. Barren Stone Mountain is a mountain other than the yellow star, and the way of heaven itself has a certain repulsiveness. All of this is caused by the fairy crystals all over the mountain, so Zuyun took it in, which meant that he was following the trend. But this clearing was different. He originally belonged to Huang Mingxing's piece of land, but Zuyun took it away by force. That was a real act of defiance. When he appeared in the universe, his body was already covered in blood. Zuyun, how are you? Mengwei quickly ran to his side. It doesn't matter, he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, looked at the large formation in front of him, and said, fortunately, the formation activated by the spirit bead is still strong. They shouldn't be able to break it in a short time, right? Not to mention that it can't be broken, even the sound can't be heard at this time. But in the formation, there were roaring sounds from time to time. It was obviously these nightmare monsters that were beginning to bombard the stars in it. As long as all the stars are destroyed, this formation will not be able to trap them. Master, what did you bring in again? I have a bad feeling. Suddenly, the voice of the world tree sounded in the ears of the two. Zuyun smiled bitterly and said, extraterritorial demons with pure blood. What? The face of the world tree changed. There is no way. Let's see if we can kill them all with the power of the origin. It won't work with ordinary spiritual power. The world tree was silent for a moment and said, Master, then Das Han and I will still need to attack at the same time. But, my feeling tells me that if tens of thousands of extraterritorial demons are killed, the great universe world may need to recover for a long time. As long as it is not destroyed. Zuyun laughed hard. In this world, the laws are gradually perfected. From day and night, there are more laws of time here. Time and space are the universe. So, generally speaking, it is difficult to destroy it. Unless there is a great power who masters these two laws and wipes out the great universe world from the root. Zuyun was also confused by these words. However, he did hear that the great universe world would not be so easy to destroy in the future. This was good news. Then, let's get started. Zuyun nodded. The world tree turned around and returned to its original form. At the same time, the ground at the location of Dozhuan Xinyi actually began to rise slowly. The world mountain began to take action. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzhuan Xianxia. Chapter 1573. Zuyun, let's step back a little, I feel an extremely huge force. Mengwei was a little surprised. The last time he followed Zuyun to the Dazhu world, he had never felt this way. But now, World Mountain and World Tree have commanded the power of their origin at the same time, and even she felt a hint of fear in her heart. Zuyun smiled slightly and said, what are you afraid of? In my world, as long as I don't want to, the power of the source cannot hurt you. Mengwei was slightly startled, and then he laughed. Yes, this is Zuyun's world. For a moment, she felt a small sense of pride in her heart. This is my man, they are still a Taoist couple now, but soon, they will become a couple of gods. In her memory, she seemed to have never heard of anyone who could achieve a world in the fairy world. After Zuyun finished speaking, his mind moved, and the original power that affected Mengwei suddenly retreated. The two of them stood side by side, watching the flat land in front of them gradually turn into a big mountain. What surprised Zuyun was that this mountain was exactly the same as World Mountain. I don't know if Sekai Yamamoto Yama came here or if he transformed into something like this. And as the ground here shook, the creatures living in the center of the universe also rushed here. Seeing Zuyun and Mengwei, they also came up to say hello. Three dogs, what are you doing here? If you don't want to see the beautiful barren stone mountain, be careful of mortals breaking in. Zuyun frowned when he saw Sangu. Hey, master, you didn't come here just because you heard something moving here and felt there was something lively to see. He didn't expect it to be Zuyun. Maybe the stench of the nightmare demon was too strong and it masked Zuyun's breath, so he didn't smell it. Wait a minute, Zuyun said, as if he suddenly remembered something. Can you feel the immortal power on the barren stone mountain? He remembered that the immortal power would be released slowly. In Huangxingxing, the immortal power would be somewhat restricted by the way of heaven. But here, the basic heavenly Dao is higher than that of Huangmingxing, so the restrictions on immortal power are not that big. Since my own spiritual power cannot cope with it, if I use my fairy power to control the immortal soul hammer, maybe I can still kill the nightmare demon later, right? Although the world tree and the world mountain work closely together, they can also control the original power of this place. But what Zuyun thinks is that if he contributes more, the world of the universe will need less time to rest. I can't smell the immortal power, but I can feel the great changes on the barren rock mountain, even what? Seeing that Sangu's expression seemed a little different, Zuyun asked quickly. In fact, I smelled an unusual elixir. These elixirs are of better quality than any other elixirs I have ever smelled. The strangest thing is that there is no change every year. After hearing Sangu's words, an incredible thought flashed through Zuyun's mind. Well, because of the existence of the immortal crystal, barren stone mountain turned into an immortal mountain? And the fairy power there promoted the elixir to turn into a fairy medicine. If so, would it be more convenient for me to activate my immortal power? Thinking of this, Zuyun quickly said to Mengwei, "Wei, let's go to Huangshi mountain and have a look. If we can use the immortal crystal, maybe this matter will become simpler." Mengwei nodded repeatedly and said, "Then let's go take a look." She knew the importance of Dazhu world to Zuyun, and the reason why she wanted Zuyun to go to the immortal world in advance was actually because of the power of Dazhu world. If they meet an immortal who is far stronger than them, they can hide directly in the world of the universe without leaving a trace. Naturally, it is unlikely to encounter danger in the fairy world. Moreover, in the immortal world, Zuyun can also realize the rules faster and become an immortal. As for the fairy light body training, its only purpose is to quickly adapt the body to the fairy world. If they go early, they can still get used to it if they take more time. At the same time, Mengwei felt that the 5 elements of chaos power that Zuyun had cultivated had already tempered his body and should be able to cope with the pressure of the immortal world. The most important thing is, she wanted to let Zuyun enter the Chaos Star Sea. Walk. The two ignored Sangu and flew straight in the direction of barren rock mountain. Where the stars shift, there is world mountain and world tree, and they are not needed for the time being. If he could use the power of the immortal crystal, Zuyun and Mengwei would directly enter the formation. A moment later, they stood on the top of the barren rock mountain and found the immortal crystal mine. In the air, streams of immortal power surged out from the mine and continued to spread down the barren rock mountain. At the same time, Zuyun also saw the extraordinary elixirs that Sangu mentioned. No, it should be a magic medicine. If possible, wouldn't it be better to transplant the yellow dragon tree here than in the soil? A thought flashed through Zuyun's mind, and he said to Mengwei, "I'll go get the immortal crystal. You can guard it here first." After that, he got into the mine, took out the immortal soul hammer, and danced wildly in it. Click. 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 Pieces of fairy crystals were smashed down, and Zuyun used his spiritual power to throw all the fairy crystals out of the mine. Mengwei took out a bag from somewhere and kept filling it. With almost 1,000 pieces of immortal crystals packed in, Zuyun emerged from the mine. Walk. Without any extra words, Zuyun carried the fairy crystal and planned to fly back to the star-shifting formation. But at this moment, the big dog and the second dog suddenly flew over. "Xiaozu, do you need help?" The two of them knew Zuyun well and knew him well when they saw him coming and going. At this time, their expressions were even more anxious, so they got straight to the point. "Help." Zuyun pondered for a moment and said, "Look, can you pick the immortal crystals? If possible, Ask someone to help pick them and send some over there. We can try. The two of them nodded in unison. Zuyun smiled slightly and said, however, you still have to be careful. After all, these are immortal powers. He had already seen that some immortal power had entangled their bodies, and he was somewhat worried that the immortal power would affect them. It doesn't matter, Big Dog disagreed and said with a smile, the changes over there will definitely affect the world of the universe, and maybe it will be a life or death situation just like the Qingping Fairy Kingdom. Don't worry, I will pay attention to myself. Ergu shook his pigtails, me too. The three of them looked at each other, smiled, and then parted. Not long after, Zuyun stood outside the formation again, and the mountain had already reached a height of 100 feet. Meng Wei threw the sack on the ground, and the fairy crystals scattered on the ground. Zuyun took out the immortal soul hammer again, and his heart condensed slightly. The immortal soul hammer immediately began to absorb the diffused immortal power. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1574. Zuyun had the same feeling as when he faced Nangong Tianli. At that time, from Qingping Immortal Country, the power of faith gathered by millions of immortals all poured into the immortal soul hammer. The feeling at this moment was exactly the same. If so, why should I be afraid of these tens of thousands of nightmare monsters? Zuyun's heart was filled with heroic spirit, but he was not in a hurry to rush to the top of the mountain. First, the uplift of the world mountain has not completely stopped. Second, he also needs to absorb as much immortal power as possible into the immortal soul hammer, so as not to be unable to continue. Zuyun, how long do you have to wait? Meng Wei didn't know what Zuyun was thinking, so he asked. Wait until the world mountain is stable. Zuyun raised his head slightly, and then said. Then I will also try to absorb the immortal power in the immortal crystal. When Zuyun said this, he was stunned and said, your power is the power of the holy demon, what's the use of the immortal crystal? Meng Wei smiled and said, I am the power of the holy demon, but you can infuse the immortal power into the hammer, so why can't I infuse the immortal power into this magic knife? Zuyun suddenly realized and smiled, then let's give it a try. Anyway, Daegu and Ergu will continue to send immortal crystals to us. As he said this, he looked into the distance, and Daegu had already come over with a sack of immortal crystals. Try it first, if it works, we can solve the danger of the nightmare monster as soon as possible. Meng Wei nodded slightly, and then walked over and put the magic knife on a piece of immortal crystal. Swish! A crisp sound rang out, and a red light rose on the magic knife. Zuyun immediately felt that the immortal power in that piece of immortal crystal was rapidly fading. It really works. Meng Wei was also very happy. She had this idea because she remembered what Ergu had told her, that the magic knife could absorb the spiritual power in the spirit stone. When she saw that Zuyun's immortal soul hammer could absorb immortal power, she tried it. It was a pleasant surprise. The two of them had more confidence in dealing with the nightmare monster. Although, in their hearts, the danger of the nightmare monster can definitely be solved. But they still need to try their best to reduce the consumption of the original power of the universe world. About half an hour later, the speed of the uplift of the world mountain also slowly stopped. The mountain, which was originally like a dead thing and lifeless, suddenly came alive at this moment. At the same time, the world tree also moved at this time. He shook the branches desperately, and pieces of leaves fell off and flew towards the world mountain. After the leaves fell on the bare rock surface, they began to take root and sprout. In an instant, it was like a spring breeze coming overnight, and thousands of pear trees bloomed. At this time, Zuyun felt countless origin powers rising from the foot of the mountain and flowing upstream along the hillside. Wherever he went, the greenness from the leaves sprouting and taking root suddenly showed vitality, and also spread towards the formation on the top of the mountain. Zuyun understood a little and said softly, original power alone is definitely not enough, so the world tree must use the world mountain as soil and the origin power as water. Finally, use the big tree transformed from leaves to fight the nightmare monster to the death. Mengwei said, it's time for us to set off. At this time, there were countless gray and white powders at their feet, all of which were the powders formed by the immortal power in the immortal crystal being completely absorbed. Let's go. Zuyun rose up, raising a cloud of dust. Mengwei also stood up and followed Zuyun with a magic knife in hand. Stepping onto the top of the mountain, Zuyun said in a deep voice, Wu Ya, be careful in everything, don't be stubborn. You should be careful too. Meng Wu Ya nodded, and then the two of them plunged into the formation. Zuyun's eyes were empty, and the thousands of stars were emitting various colors. These were all stars transformed by the spirit beads. Because of their different properties, the stars emit different lights. And in this light, shadows would pass from time to time, and it was obviously those nightmare monsters that were destroying the stars. In just a moment, many stars had exploded, and some quietly dimmed. These nightmare monsters are very strong. Meng Wu Ya said solemnly. There is no way out. Zuyun smiled slightly, raised the immortal soul hammer, and ran towards the nightmare monster closest to him. I'll go over there. Meng Wu Ya also flashed and rushed to another direction. The immortal soul hammer infused with immortal power was extremely powerful. With one hammer, the nightmare monster was instantly blasted into slag. Zuyun was delighted and used the formation to dodge. The next moment, he appeared behind a nightmare monster again. Die! Another hammer. In this way, one hammer hit a nightmare monster. Soon, Zuyun continued to blast and kill, and was discovered by the other nightmare monsters. Immediately, some of the surrounding nightmare monsters stopped attacking the stars and turned to surround Zuyun. Every move in this formation was naturally under Zuyun's control, but he pretended not to notice it, and instead deliberately went to find those lonely nightmare monsters and then blasted and killed them. If he could delay time by the way, it could reduce the loss of the original power to some extent. But the nightmare monster was born with a deep mind, and soon discovered Zuyun's purpose, no longer concealed, and flew towards Zuyun with great fanfare. Zuyun dared not to pretend anymore, grinned, and quickly pinched a formation formula in his hand. The stars are turning. As soon as the formation changed, these nightmare monsters were immediately transferred to a corner of the formation by Zuyun. As long as you don't attack the stars, I will play with you slowly here. Zuyun's smile turned cold, and he raised the immortal soul hammer to look for the nightmare monsters again. And whenever a nightmare monster reached a consensus and wanted to surround and kill Zuyun, it would be transferred away by Zuyun in the same way. Finally, most of the nightmare monsters were gathered together, and Mengwei also retreated to Zuyun's side. Zuyun, I can't kill them anymore. Mengwei panted slightly, mainly because the power of the holy demon was consumed a lot. Whether in Huangmingxing or in the world of the universe, Mengwei could not restore the power of the holy demon, and could only use the magic jade bed. Then let's go out first and see how the world tree and the world mountain are prepared. After that, Zuyun took Mengwei away from the battle of stars. Standing on the world mountain, the scene in front of him has changed dramatically. The mountain is full of vegetation and green. But they all surrounded the mountain top. Old tree, what's the situation now? Zuyun was not afraid of being heard by others, so he asked loudly. It's almost done, no matter how many nightmare monsters there are, they can't leave the mountain top. Hearing the tired and hoarse voice of the world tree, Zuyun smiled. In that case, I might as well let this formation explode. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1575. Mengwei immediately went down the mountain. If the formation exploded, she would definitely have no power to resist. Zuyun heard the affirmative answer from the world tree, and pondered for a moment, and said, "Old tree, if the nightmare demon breaks through here with all its strength, how long will it take?" "I don't know how long it will take," said the world tree. "I can only say that when all the original power is consumed, the mountain and I will not be able to stop it." Zuyun smiled slightly and said, "Then I will be relieved. Get ready, I will make all the spirit beads here explode." As his mind was focused, the world tree stopped talking. Zuyun put away the immortal soul hammer and quickly pinched the formation formula with both hands. The stars are moving. Through his control, Zuyun first gathered all the stars transformed by the spirit beads in one place. Then, he gathered all the nightmare demons in the formation together. When they discovered the changes in the formation, they knew that a disaster was coming and struggled to escape. But how could Zuyun let them do what they wanted? All the spirit beads exploded at the same time. Boom! The originally peaceful and vibrant world mountain top exploded. The spiritual power contained in countless spirit beads burst out at the same time, and it was natural in this small range. The entire world mountain began to shake, and countless rocks collapsed and rolled down. Most of the giant trees that took root and sprouted from the leaves of the world tree were also broken. It can be seen how powerful this power is. Then, the formation cracked, and those nightmare monsters appeared out of thin air on the top of the mountain. Many nightmare monsters were already dead and were blown into pieces. But more of them fled around with various injuries. At this time, it was the turn of the world tree to take action. Original power. The world tree roared, and the dry branches suddenly glowed with green light. These lights actually grew out on the branches and leaves, and then flew towards the top of the mountain, instantly forming a net of heaven and earth. There is no way to go up to heaven, and no way to go down the mountain. Those nightmare monsters immediately stopped on the green light curtain, but they couldn't get through. The stench, the roar, and the blood all showed the situation of these nightmare monsters at this time. Zuyun watched coldly, like a raid on the side. He didn't dare to be careless. Although the world tree promised him, as long as there is a loophole in this big net, countless nightmare monsters will escape from it. With the ability of the nightmare monsters and their ability to lie dormant, this is equivalent to burying a mine that will explode at any time in the universe world. But obviously, Zuyun's worry is a bit redundant. The aftermath of the explosion of the spirit beads, one wave after another, continued to wreak havoc on these nightmare monsters. Finally, when the vibration stopped, the number of nightmare monsters was less than 100. "Zuyun, the next thing is up to you, ahem." The voice of the world tree was weak again. Zuyun nodded slightly and said, "You've worked hard, leave it to me." After that, he flashed and rushed in again with the immortal soul hammer. Roar! The surviving nightmare monsters immediately attacked and surrounded Zuyun. They were teased by Zuyun in the formation, and with the dilemma here, they wanted to put all their anger on Zuyun. Looking for death. Zuyun looked at half of it, raised the immortal soul hammer in one hand and blasted it over, directly blasting the nightmare monster in the front into powder. At the same time, his other hand was not idle, but quickly drew the heavenly talisman. Trapped. The word trapped took shape, turning into a cage, and once again trapped all the nightmare monsters in a small space. In this way, he was directly facing only a few nightmare monsters. Then, he held the hammer with both hands, killed these nightmare monsters, and finally controlled all the chaos power. On the immortal soul hammer, the immortal light burst out. This time, the immortal power from the immortal crystal, the power of faith originally contained in it, and all the chaos power in his body, all burst out at this moment. In the cage, the terrifying roar of the nightmare monster came. But everything is too late. They have consumed a lot of power in the blood of the nightmare demon in the formation, and now they are trapped in this cage again by Zuyun. If you can't escape, you will be a living target. Boom. The immortal soul hammer, which carries 3 kinds of power, suddenly becomes bigger, and then smashes down heavily. Crack. This heavy blow actually made the world mountain feel the sound of shattering. However, Zuyun didn't take it too seriously. This is not the real world mountain. If it is destroyed, it is destroyed. At most, it is just the loss of the original power, and it is not impossible to regenerate. Crack. Crack. The cracking sound was getting stronger and stronger, and Zuyun's hand strength was getting stronger and stronger. Zuyun even unexpectedly discovered that the crack seemed to appear under the cage. A bad thought appeared in his mind. But he felt that nothing would go wrong. As long as all these nightmare monsters were smashed to death, there would be no need for this mountain to exist. Boom. The cracking sound and the sound of the immortal soul hammer falling completely merged together. The mountain collapsed, and the monster died. The cage transformed by the heavenly talisman also broke apart, and almost all the nightmare monsters here turned into blood foam. Zuyun's immortal soul hammer also exhausted all its power and automatically returned to his purple mansion. His hands were empty. Looking at the scene in front of him, the bright red blood flowed into the crack, and Zuyun kept panting. He had used up all the power in his body. But at this moment, he suddenly found that a black shadow was hiding in the blood and took the opportunity to get into the crack. He wiped his eyes quickly and looked over there. But the problem was that he had no more power in his body, let alone the Divine Eyes technique. Even the Breaking Void Spirit Eyes technique could not be used. Big Tree, is there a nightmare monster escaping? He asked quickly. But he did not get a response from the World Tree. Not good. He exclaimed, his hammer had obviously smashed the Skynet. And the nightmare monster actually. Zuyun hurriedly chased after it with the Xianxia technique, ignoring the blood and stench, and lay on the edge of the crack. A black shadow sank into the crack. Zuyun was extremely sure. But he was powerless at this moment. Wia, wia. There is a fish that slipped through the net. Zuyun yelled hysterically, trying to remind Mengwia. After hearing the voice, Mengwia also quickly flew up and used the magic eye on the crack. However, the black shadow had disappeared. It's over now. Mengwia's face turned pale. She saw Zuyun's full strength attack very clearly. But she didn't expect that there was still a fish that slipped through the net. Traps this place. You go down the mountain. Zuyun himself was powerless to continue, but asked Mengwia to go down the mountain. But at this time, this world mountain also began to collapse. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzwan Xianxia. Chapter 1576. Zuyun, be careful. Zuyun was already weak, and Mengwia was afraid that Zuyun would fall because of this. It would be okay if he was just buried by the mountain, but he was afraid that he would be buried with the demon. When the time comes, he will be completely powerless. Who will be the opponent of the nightmare demon? Mengwia exclaimed, not caring about flying down the mountain, but quickly went over and lifted Zuyun up. Wia, you go down the mountain first and don't worry about me. Zuyun gritted his teeth and said, this nightmare demon can escape to death in this situation, but he is afraid that if he loses this moment of opportunity, he will escape from the scope of the world mountain again. What about you? Mengwei refused to let go. I'm going to the immortal mansion to recover. You block this place first. Here, except for Mengwei who still has fighting ability, Zuyun doesn't think anyone else is feasible. Including the big dog and the 2 dogs. Originally, Jogun could do it, but unfortunately, Zhou Gun protected Yeziyi and Lian Nishang from going to the 7-star gate and never came back. As for the others, they come here just to die. Okay, then come back quickly. Meng Wei immediately understood Zhu Yun's intention, and as soon as he loosened his grip, he disappeared from the spot. At the same time, Zhu Yun suddenly appeared in the immortal mansion with a thought. Feeling the immortal power in the immortal mansion, he ran towards the gate of the immortal mansion without hesitation. There is endless void. Under the endless black shadows, streaks of ownerless gray-white chaotic power floated in the void. Zhu Yun sat down cross-legged and began to use the qi refining method. The chaotic forces were immediately pulled and slowly moved towards Zhu Yun's body. Within a moment, some of the chaos power was refined and entered Zhu Yun's body. The chaos lotus, which was originally wilting due to the exhaustion of chaos power, gradually showed its vitality. That's not enough, Wei, hold on a little longer. Zhu Yun shouted in his heart and practiced crazily. In the void, it was as if a vortex appeared, and the power of chaos was drawn by Zhu Yun. At this time, World Mountain has turned into a pile of ruins, and World Tree is also languishing. Perhaps it was because of the countershock from Zhu Yun's hammer that he just stood there, unable to do anything to help Meng Wei at all. One can imagine how powerful Zhu Yun was before. What frightened Meng Wei even more was the nightmare demon's ability to escape from it. Where are you? Are you hiding or have you escaped? Meng Wei didn't have much holy demon power left in her body. If all of it was used on the demon eye, she wouldn't be able to deal with it if the nightmare demon counterattacked later. With Zhu Yun's lesson learned, Meng Wei did not dare to waste any more. He just stood at the fairy crystal and carefully absorbed wisps of celestial power with the magic knife. A full hour later, a hoarse voice suddenly sounded behind Meng Wei. Meng Wei. Hearing this familiar voice, Meng Wei turned around suddenly, and she knew it was Nangang Xiu. We also know that Nangang Xiu was taken into the world of Dazhu by Zhu Yun. But Nangang Xiu, isn't he dead? She cut off all her blood, causing her vitality to disappear. Meng Wei could see clearly. In the end, Zhu Yun may have felt a little reluctant to let go, so he took her into the world of the universe together with the magic seal. Could it be that the way of heaven here is different, so Nangang Xiu can come back to life again? She frowned and said, "This place is very dangerous, don't come here." "I know," Nangang Xiu nodded and said, "that's why I'm here to help." "You help?" Meng Wei asked strangely, "How can you help?" "You are trapped by the magic seal, and it seems that you have trouble moving." "It's a blessing in disguise," Nangang Xiu smiled, his voice still a little hoarse, and said, "I am connected with the demon seal. I committed suicide before and was considered dead, but my soul was imprisoned by the demon seal and could not dissipate. Now, it's the magic seal, and the magic seal is me. To put it another way, I should be the weapon spirit." Meng Wei thought for a moment, and there was no flaw in her words, but just in case, she still said, "Even if you can help me with this magic seal, after all, I am not familiar with your magical powers. In case of danger, come, there is a flaw in our encirclement." Nangang Xiu smiled and said, "Meng Wei, are you thinking too much? I am a weapon spirit, and this is a magic weapon. You are a demon cultivator, so naturally you can control this magic weapon. Even though you have that sword in your hand, but if there is one more magic seal, it will be equivalent to one more method. Sorry, I'm used to using the magic knife." Meng Wei continued to refuse, then turned his head, stared at the ruins of the mountain, and said, "Since you are alive, Zhu Yun is also very happy. I advise you not to seek death." She and Nangang Xiu were just acquaintances and did not have much relationship. Although in terms of seniority in the Yaluo sect, Nangang Xiu is still a figure of her senior uncle's generation. Maybe it was because Nangang Xiu had the blood of a nightmare demon, so she thought it was better to stay away from him. but the successive rejections made Nangongxiu feel dissatisfied. Mengwei, don't think that just because you are Zhu Yun's Taoist companion, you can call yourself the mistress of her world. I, Nangongxiu, have been dependent on Zhu Yun for life and death after all. As he said that, the magic seal gradually shrank, and finally it was like a piece of heavy armor worn on Nangongxiu. With her hands and feet exposed, she took long steps and leaned towards Mengwei. Mengwei's expression suddenly changed, and he shouted sternly, "Nangongxiu, stop! You told me to stop, so I stopped." Nangongxiu had a sneer on his face, and suddenly the demonic energy in his body surged, turning into a huge phantom, and covered Mengwei's head. Looking for death. Mengwei's face changed, and she felt a sense of familiarity from the demonic energy. At first, she thought that the other party was using the Yaluo magic, but when the demonic energy was about to completely trap her, her face suddenly changed. Because of a foul smell, followed. She suddenly condensed the power of the holy demon in the demon eye, and when her body retreated, she suddenly saw that the one trapped in the demon seal was actually a hideous nightmare demon. This must be the one that escaped. Mengwei was smart, and after thinking carefully, he figured out the key. This nightmare demon must have known that it could not escape his magic eyes, so he simply used the nightmare demon bloodline left in the magic seal by Nangongxiu, and used some kind of magic to merge them together. Moreover, he used Nangongxiu to confuse himself and then attacked by surprise. Extraterritorial demon, dare to deceive me. Mengwei sneered immediately. Fortunately, he was very vigilant and did not let the other party get close. Pulling the distance, she had enough time to deal with it. The magic knife was full of immortal power. She only needed one strike to completely kill the other party. However, the other party was in full swing now, and Mengwei decided to avoid the edge for the time being. Since the other party did not take the opportunity to escape, he must have some plan, so it is better to take advantage of him and see what he is going to do. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1577. Mengwei, you are also a member of the demon clan. If my guess is correct, you should be from the holy demon clan, right? The demon clan is of the same lineage as our demon world. There is no need for you to fight me to the death. Nangongxiu suddenly spoke, with a strange look on his face, which seemed to reveal his sincerity to be honest with Mengwei. Mengwei is indeed a member of the holy demon clan. But at this moment, her heart was completely focused on Zhu Yun. How could she be deceived? But I have to say that Nangongxiu's words made her feel a little moved. However, it quickly disappeared. The demons do have a certain relationship with the demon world. It can even be said that the demons come from the demon world. They are human beings from the demon world. Because they could not survive in the demon world, they moved to the fairy world and then multiplied. But the pure human race is xenophobic by nature. The idea that those who are not of my race must have different minds is deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. Therefore, they have been living in the chaotic sea of stars. I don't know how many years it took for them to gain a firm foothold in the fairy world. However, they still dare not publicize in a big way that they want to live in the fairy land. And deep in their hearts, there is an idea of overthrowing the fairy world ruled by humans and letting their demons take the lead. Mengwei did not tell Zhu Yun about this, as she was still worried that Zhu Yun would think too much about it. You are right, Mengwei said lightly, we are indeed of the same blood, but the problem is that we demons and you demons are on the same level. If we were not forced by your demons back then, why would we have to leave our hometown? Mengwei, the situation is changing. At this time, our goals are actually similar, and we can completely put aside the grudges from tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of years ago. We nightmares are also unpopular in the demon world, so we will continue to send our tribesmen to slowly sneak into the fairy world, in order to one day take control of the fairy world and make the fairy world the true habitat of our nightmares. You almost did it. Meng Wei narrowed his eyes and said, what I want to know is, what is your relationship with Nangong Tianli? Nangong Tianli. Nangong Xiu said with a smile, he is just a relatively lucky chess piece, but it has swelled a bit as he ranks behind the immortal emperor. Meng Wei got a message from the seemingly casual question. This nightmare monster lurking in Huangxingxing should not be of the same lineage as Nangong Tianli. In order to confirm this idea, she suddenly changed the topic and said, are you nightmares all named Nangong? Not really, Nangong Xiu said with a smile, it's just that after entering the fairy world, we need a surname. We are located in the southern barbarian land of the demon world and live under the underground palace, so we took Nangong as our surname. Purpose. I'm just afraid that when tribesmen who hide themselves well meet each other, they will mistakenly think that each other is a human tribe. I see, Meng Wei chuckled, then I want to know, why did you not die from such a powerful blow from Zhu Yun, but were able to escape? Nangong Xiu laughed and said, perhaps you demons have been away from the demon world for too long and have forgotten the innate magical powers of our nightmares. The holy demons have magic eyes, so why don't we nightmares have unexpected magical powers? Since you don't want to say it, forget it, Meng Wei shrugged and spread his hands, pretending to take 2 steps forward casually, but, I want to know, if you let me let you go, how can you be in this Zhu Yun's world, will I survive? Besides, what benefits will I get? Since we nightmares have been able to stay in the fairy world for so long, it is natural that it will be easier to survive in this world where the laws are not yet perfect. As for your benefits, Nangong Xiu smiled sweetly and said, we can allow the Holy Demon clan to migrate here and develop without any restrictions. This benefit is really tempting. Meng Wei smiled slightly. If she were still the original saint of the Holy Demon clan, she might really be moved. It's a pity that she no longer cares about this identity, so why would she care about the Holy Demon clan? Even through Nangong Xiu's words, she completely understood why Nangong Tianli trapped her in the immortal mansion. The purpose is also to covet the unique abilities of the Holy Demon tribe. The magic eye is not unique to Meng Wei. However, the demon eyes of the other Holy Demon tribes are not as powerful as Meng Wei. Once Nangong Tianli masters it to a certain level, then using the Holy Demon clan may really subvert the entire fairy world. What a deep conspiracy! Meng Wei was extremely lucky at this moment that he was able to meet Zhu Yun. To be honest, Meng Wei stared at Nangong Xiu and said, I don't believe you nightmares. You are good at taking advantage of other people's emotions. I don't know if you are lying to me at this time. Meng Wei, I can swear the oath of the ancestors. You are also from the demon world, and you know that the restrictions of the oath of the ancestors on us are far greater than the oath of the human race's heaven. Meng Wei was greatly surprised. The oath of ancestors in the demon world is similar to the oath of heaven. Because of blood inheritance, swearing by your ancestors is equivalent to swearing by your own blood. No matter the name. No matter how you change your name, you can't change the blood in your body. Does the other party really want to cooperate with me? Meng Wei originally wanted to gain more confidence, but he didn't know that he fell into the trap of the nightmare little by little. But at this moment, the ground suddenly shook, and the broken rocks suddenly flew up. Meng Wei suddenly woke up, and when he thought about it carefully, his expression changed drastically. Then, the world tree seemed to come alive, and green buds quickly emerged from the dry branches. These green buds were naturally born from the power of the origin. As soon as they showed the appearance of leaves, they all broke away from the branches and flew towards Nangong Xiu. At the same time, countless gravel also flew over. Obviously, the world mountain and the world tree had recovered, and they knew Nangong Xiu's conspiracy. Not good. Nangong Xiu's face changed, and he ran to the side. We can't let him run away. Meng Wei gritted his teeth, If he didn't kill him now, when would he? She still remembered what Nangong Xiu had just said, that they took Nangong as their surname because they lived in the underground palace. Even, she alone wanted to seize control of this great universe world. Regardless of the little holy and demonic power in her body, Meng Wei used all her strength to control it. Not only did her eyes glow with holy and demonic power, but her whole body was full of magic power. Her figure flashed, and she had already raised the magic knife. Puff! The knife pierced heavily into the magic seal. Boom! A loud noise. This is the collision of immortal power and magic power. Meng Wei was thrown out. And Nangong Xiu, not only rushed forward with this vibration, but also destroyed the magic seal, as if he had escaped from the imprisonment and fled forward. Warm Ti. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1578. We can't let him get away. At this moment, Meng Wei had only this thought in mind, but she no longer had any holy demon power. The previous knife had used up all her strength. Except for the remaining immortal power in the magic knife, if Nangong Xiu returns, she will be powerless. Meng Wei was also well aware of the danger at this time, but she didn't know when Zuyun would be able to come back. Seeing the immortal crystals not far away, she gritted her teeth, took a piece of immortal crystal directly, and actually began to operate the Yoluo magic skill, treating the immortal crystal as a spirit stone, thereby absorbing the immortal power in it. Puff! The immortal power was so powerful that even though Meng Wei had recovered her holy demon body, she was more like a demon cultivator in the spiritual world because of the magic eye. This pure immortal power crashed into her 9 meridians, and immediately her throat felt sweet, and she suddenly spit out a mouthful of blood. A lot of immortal power dissipated, but Meng Wei still relied on the strong physique of the holy demon clan to let some immortal power enter her 9 meridians. It's useful, absorb some more. With the entry of immortal power, Meng Wei's 9 meridians seemed to have hot magma flowing. But she couldn't care so much. She held the magic knife in one hand and picked up the sack beside her with the other hand, and casually dug a lot of immortal crystals into it, and then chased in the direction where Nangong Xiu left. Pieces of immortal crystals turned into powder, and there was not much immortal power that could completely enter Meng Wei's body. She didn't care about the danger that her body might appear at any time, and she chased Nangong Xiu so closely. Crazy, Meng Wei, you must be crazy. Nangong Xiu's eyes showed panic. Of course she recognized the immortal crystal. She also knew that the Holy Demon clan had multiplied in the fairy world for countless years, and had slowly adapted to the immortal power. It was normal to be able to absorb the immortal power for their own use. Although the immortal power can also cause damage to Meng Wei. But once he is caught up by Meng Wei, he will be the only one who will die. Under Lu Chen's full-strength hammer, he borrowed the blood of the demons in all the nightmare monsters to survive. In fact, there is no power to resist in the body. If she hadn't discovered that Nangong Xiu and the magic seal were connected as one, and there was a certain amount of nightmare blood in it, she wouldn't even have the strength to say a word. That's why she wanted to seduce Meng Wei. Almost succeeded. I'm crazy, so what? Meng Wei's face was a little hideous, and blood flowed from his mouth when he spoke. She knew that she had made the right bet at this moment, so she smiled miserably. As long as I kill you, I can still survive. Because she has the magic jade bed. I don't know where Nangong Tianli got this bed from, it actually has such an effect. Maybe it was brought from the demon world. Crazy, you demons have completely changed after arriving in the fairyland. Nangong Xiu was unwilling, but she had no choice but to vent her anger and escape with the little remaining demonic energy in her body. Her only hope was to kill Meng Wei before he caught up with her. Nangong Xiu gritted her teeth and ran desperately. But she had just arrived here and was in a panic, so she ran towards the center of the universe. Meng Wei only had Nangong Xiu in his eyes and didn't pay attention to the direction of this place. Until Ergu suddenly flew over. Last time it was Daegu who flew the fairy crystals with a sword, this time it was Ergu's turn. When he saw Meng Wei dragging a sack to chase Nangong Xiu, he was also completely dumbfounded. Because Nangong Xiu was his companion from the Nine Netherworld to the Spirit World, and then to the Xianguang sect. Young Palace Master, what are you doing? Ergu was also dragging a sack full of fairy crystals. He landed between the two. Meng Wei was shaken by the immortal power, and after a period of running, he was speechless for a while, which also gave Nangong Xiu the upper hand. This nightmare demon completely occupied Nangong Xiu's body and devoured her soul. It can be said that it got all her memories. He immediately spoke first and said, Ergu, Meng Wei was possessed by the nightmare demon, and she wants to kill me. This ability to bite back is naturally unmatched by ordinary people, not to mention that Meng Wei has something to say at this time. What? The nightmare demon possessed the body. Ergu was suddenly shocked and hurriedly stepped back 2 steps, staring at Meng Wei with his eyes. It's not that he doubted Meng Wei, it's really that Meng Wei still holds the immortal crystal in his hand at this moment. He knew that the extraterritorial demon came from the demon world, which is a plane at the same level as the immortal world. He thought it was normal to be able to absorb the immortal crystal. And Zuyun didn't tell anyone that Meng Wei was actually a member of the demon clan in the immortal world. This aroused Ergu's vigilance. Meng Wei was extremely anxious when she saw Ergu being deceived by Nangong Xiu, but the more she was so anxious, the more she couldn't speak. This made Ergu feel that Meng Wei was really possessed by the nightmare demon. He didn't know how to save him. He should kill Meng Wei to eliminate the trouble, but he felt that Zuyun should solve this matter, so he just prepared to stop Meng Wei. Ergu, she was seriously injured. Kill her while she is sick. Nangong Xiu saw Ergu took out his spirit knife, and a hint of sinister smile flashed in her eyes. Ergu had his back to her and it was impossible for him to find out. Meng Wei felt like a fishbone stuck in her throat, and could only endure the pain in her body and retreat a few steps. But her eyes were always looking at Nangong Xiu, as if she was afraid that she would take the opportunity to escape. Even though she knew that Nangong Xiu was reluctant to leave at this time. Because her own magic eye was a great threat to her. Only if she died, she might be able to stay in the great universe world with complete peace of mind and finally plot to seize it. Xiaozu, I'm sorry. Although Ergu was only in the nascent soul stage, the middle spirit knife in his hand was a top-grade spiritual weapon. It was obtained by Zuyun from the spiritual master sword master in the tribulation stage, and finally given to him. Ergu's talent was ordinary, but his will was the most resolute among the three. With the help of Zuyun, he completely refined the spirit knife for his own use. And in this great universe world, he could really kill Meng Wei with one knife. Fortunately, Ergu did not have the intention to kill Meng Wei. When he slashed the first knife, he chose to use the back of the knife. The extremely sharp knife aura appeared with a bang, and Meng Wei hurriedly dodged with his limited immortal power. She could kill Ergu. But she couldn't do it at all. Knowing that she couldn't gain Ergu's trust by talking, Meng Wei had no choice but to deal with Ergu. But Meng Wei kept staring at Nangong Xiu from time to time, and used his body skills to slowly move towards that side. She had all the skills, apart from the magic eye, the magic knife in her hand, and the Yoluo magic skill. But being able to absorb immortal power was already the limit of what he could bear, and it was a bit difficult to use immortal power to control other methods. Her angry eyes almost spit out fire. But suddenly, a flash of inspiration came to her mind. I actually forgot it. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1579. Don't resist in vain. Ergo still used the back of the knife, but the more he fought, the more strange he felt. He could feel that Menghui had the strength to fight back, but why did he move closer to Nangongxiu? When he first appeared, Ergo chose to believe Nangongxiu. But after a few slashes and Menghui's reaction, he felt something was wrong. After concentrating for a moment, Ergo reached into his arms and took out a jade talisman. Big dog, the young palace master has been possessed by someone, come and help me. Sound transmission jade talisman. After a moment, Big Dog also responded, only 3 short words. I'll be there soon. Putting the jade talisman back into his arms, Ergo turned the back of the knife and chopped with the spirit blade. Menghui looked ashen, and he didn't expect Ergo to call Big Dog again. Although she knew Ergo better, it didn't mean that she didn't know Big Dog's methods. What De Go learned was the Overlord sword technique of Wanjian Mountain. Once he started, he would go forward regardless of the opponent's strength. Either I beat you to death, or I would be beaten to death by you. If De Go came, would she really be killed by mistake? There was not enough time for her to quietly approach Nangongxiu again. In desperation, Menghui suddenly raised his arm. Ang! A dragon roar rose into the sky. Skyfire Dragon. As a demon body, Menghui could not control any of his magic powers with immortal power. But for the Skyfire Dragon, it originally belonged to Huangming Xing, and naturally belonged to the avenue of the immortal realm. The immortal power absorbed by Menghui benefited the Skyfire Dragon a lot. The Skyfire Dragon suddenly jumped out, turned in the air, dodged Ergo's big knife, opened its mouth and rushed towards Nangongxiu. She actually has Skyfire. Nangongxiu's face changed, but fortunately, it was not difficult to dodge Skyfire. Moreover, she could feel that the breath of the Skyfire was not strong. Unless it completely attached to her body and burned her to death, otherwise, she could still deal with it. At the same time, she could see that this was Menghui's last resort. She wanted to drag herself into the water before she died. Unfortunately, I saw through everything about you. Nangongxiu sneered and dodged the Skyfire Dragon nimbly. Menghui's face was extremely pale. She knew that she could not hold on for long. If she was killed by Ergo before the Skyfire Dragon killed Nangongxiu, I am afraid that everything would be in vain. But at the moment, he had no choice. After letting the Skyfire Dragon attack on its own, she focused on dealing with Ergo's spiritual knife. It must be said that Ergo's strength has improved a lot, and he danced the big knife tightly. Every knife was just cut from her side, leaving deep marks on the ground. But how could she know that Ergo had already doubted Nangongxiu's identity? Nangongxiu said that Menghui was possessed by the nightmare demon, and he had no way to confirm it. But Menghui's every move, especially in such a crisis, was determined to kill Nangongxiu. This is very similar to Menghui's previous stubbornness. And everything is based on Nangongxiu's one-sided words. Ergo, why don't you come over and help me put out this Skyfire? The power of the Skyfire Dragon was beyond Nangongxiu's imagination. All this was because it absorbed some fairy power, which made the Skyfire Dragon a little different. Originally, it could only be said to be an ordinary Skyfire. But what kind of power is the fairy power? With just a little bit, the Skyfire Dragon's intelligence was greatly opened, which made Nangongxiu's response a little stretched. But how could Ergo let her do what she wanted? Now, she used extremely conservative measures. Even several fatal knives were deliberately controlled to pass Menghui. He could feel that Menghui was at the end of her strength. Even if she was really possessed by the nightmare demon, she could not escape under his coercion. He was of course happy to let Nangongxiu be in the same situation. Finally, a spiritual sword with fire flew over from a distance, and Nangongxiu shouted at the top of her voice, "Big dog, come and save me." Hearing this voice, Ergu was also happy. Big Dog came quite fast. He immediately slashed with a knife, forcing Mengwe back a few steps, and then said in a deep voice, "Young Palace Master, if you sit cross-legged, I won't kill you." Mengwe was stunned, and his body was also stagnant. Ergu knew that I was not possessed by the nightmare demon. She wanted to see something from Ergu's face, but there was no useful information. She thought about it in her heart. Anyway, she couldn't do anything to Ergu at the moment, and Big Dog had already come, so she just made up her mind and sat down cross-legged. To her surprise, Ergu took a few steps back. Not far away, Nangongxiu, who had just called Daegu for help, saw this scene and couldn't help but screamed, "Ergu, what are you doing? Kill her quickly, kill her quickly." Ergu laughed coldly and shouted, "You said Mengwe was possessed by the nightmare demon, I suspect you are also possessed by the nightmare demon." "Ergu, if I was possessed, why would I ask you for help?" Besides, Mengwe didn't say a word. The nightmare demon dodged the attack of the sky fire dragon while shouting in shock. Mengwe frowned slightly, but suddenly smiled, and then closed her eyes tightly. She no longer dodged with immortal power, but began to force out the immortal power in her body. Ergu is still the same Ergu. He looks so honest, and even the pigtails on the back of his head are a little funny. But beneath this, there is extremely careful thinking. From the beginning to the end, maybe just at the beginning, he had doubts about himself. And then he attacked himself just to stabilize Nangongxiu and prevent her from escaping. He even summoned a big dog to help in order to control both of them. When Zuyun comes back, he will naturally be able to tell who the real nightmare is. As Mengwe expected, there was no communication between the big dog and the second dog. The Fenwu sword suddenly flashed through the fire and rushed down. The sky fire dragon also received Mengwe's order and retreated straight back, leaving this place completely to the big dog. The phoenix fire formed a circular wall of fire, completely trapping Nangongxiu in it. When the wall of fire dissipated, Big Dog's Fenwu sword was already placed on Nangongxiu's already somewhat dry neck. "Ergu, what else do you want to do?" the big dog said calmly, without even looking at Nangongxiu. "Wait here until the young palace master can speak, and then we can ask." The big dog glanced at Mengwe, whose eyes were closed, and said, "What if she can't speak forever? Then wait until Xiaozhu comes back. No matter where Xiaozhu is now, he will definitely come back." The big dog nodded, his body like a pine tree, standing still. In fact, they already knew it. Mengwe is really Mengwe. But what is Nangongxiu? Don't know yet. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 1580. Zuyun had no idea what was happening in the universe. In his mind, the nightmare demon kept thinking about escaping, but Mengwe had his magic eye. Even if you want to escape, where can you escape? But he didn't expect that the nightmare demon would do the opposite and take over the demon seal to become his own body through Nangongxiu and the blood left in the demon seal. It almost made the nightmare demon escape. If it weren't for Ergu's alertness, I'm afraid the nightmare demon might really have this possibility. For a long time, Zuyun slowly opened his eyes. It's almost there. 50% of the chaos power is completely enough. If we wait any longer, I'm afraid something will change. Zuyun quickly stood up, and with a thought in his heart, he appeared in the small courtyard, and then he stepped into it in a flash. Seeing the scene in front of him, he took a sharp breath. Originally, the rocks were all broken and stacked on top of each other, but now they were scattered all over the ground. And among these gravels, there are many dead leaves. Zuyun could feel that these dead leaves were also leaves transformed by the power of the original source. However, it will become like this as the vitality dissipates. Looking at the world tree again, there is no sense of life at all. What on earth happened? Zuyun was extremely shocked. After World Tree helped him suppress the nightmare demon, it was actually almost exhausted. It's not that you will die, you will slowly recover over time. This is what World Tree said before. But what I saw at this time was that the World Tree looked completely like a dead tree. He didn't know that World Tree was almost overdrawn because of Menghui's help. Of course, the World Tree will still not die, but it is really uncertain how long it will take to recover. Even Zuyun at this time was not sure. However, he can know that World Tree is not dead. If the World Tree dies, it will probably cause huge shocks in the universe. There was no sound everywhere, and Zuyun could only search for clues about Menghui through the traces on the ground. Spreading the power of his soul, he quickly discovered a pile of gravel that was different from World Mountain. These stones seemed to have been refined, more like spiritual materials. Zuyun picked up a stone and carefully penetrated the power of his soul into it. After a moment, he stood up suddenly. This is the magic seal. He clearly remembered that Nangongxiu was dead. It can even be said that Nangongxiu and the magic seal have become one and become a magic weapon. But at this time, the magic weapon was destroyed, and Nangongxiu was missing. So, what exactly happened? Is it possible that Nangongxiu and Nightmare Demon? In his mind, he couldn't help but recall the scene when the two worlds were not united. Nangongyan was using the relatively pure nightmare bloodline in Nangongxiu's body. So, Nangongxiu is dead, but his blood still exists in him. In this way, the nightmare demon most likely took advantage of Nangongxiu, and finally had a battle with Menghui. The power of Hui Saint Demon has been greatly depleted. If this nightmare monster has methods and abilities that we don't know about, things may change. Zuyun immediately became anxious. If he had known this, he should have come back earlier. He didn't care to blame himself, and forced himself to calm down and think about how to find the whereabouts of Menghui and Nightmare Demon. By the way, Nangongxiu. If Nangongxiu comes to life again and Wu Ya chases after him again, maybe. He whispered to himself and looked around. His eyes fell on the place where the immortal crystal was originally placed, and his pupils suddenly shrank. Previously, I used a sack to hold the fairy crystals, but now the sack is gone, and the fairy crystals are also missing a lot. He stepped forward quickly, so fast that he kicked up a lot of white dust. This is the powder of immortal crystal. Zuyun concentrated his mind. The powder may not be noticeable when it falls on the ground, but when it is raised, it is like white gray mist. You can even see it extending towards the center of the universe. There. Zuyun immediately picked up the remaining pieces of fairy crystals, and at the same time offered the fairy soul hammer, using the fairy soul hammer to absorb the fairy power in it, while running closely. He guessed that Menghui was unable to do so, so he thought of using the magic knife to absorb the power in the fairy crystal like him. I had such an experience before when I faced the Nightmare Demon group. Zuyun raised his heart to his throat. Fortunately, when he saw Big Dog and two dogs, one staring at Menghui and the other staring at Nangongxiu, he finally felt relieved. Xiaozu, you are finally here. Big Dog's sword was still on Nangongxiu's neck. Ergu stepped forward to greet him, and before Zuyun could speak, he said, "Look, who was taken away by the Nightmare Demon." Zuyun glanced at Menghui and saw her smiling sweetly, with relief in her eyes mixed with a kind of affection. He didn't make a decision, but turned his head to Nangongxiu. "Zuyun," Nangongxiu said pitifully, "I finally survived, can you bear to kill me?" Obviously, Zuyun would definitely recognize him if he knew it. So I used this method. Pity. Zuyun would never give him a chance. Nightmare, he slowly stepped forward and said calmly, "Nangongxiu is dead. And you finally came back to life, what does it have to do with me?" You even ruined Nangongxiu and ruined my heart. The only thought left by Nangongxiu. How can I still let you live? After the words fell, Zuyun shouted, "Big dog, get out of the way." The big dog's figure flashed, and the next moment, the immortal soul hammer crashed down. Boom! The ground shook, and Nangongxiu was smashed into powder. After a while, the shaking stopped, and the world seemed to quiet down. Mengwei stood up tremblingly and walked towards Zuyun. But before she got close, her figure softened and her whole body went limp. Wei. Zuyun quickly hugged Mengwei, feeling the raging fairy power in her body, and couldn't help but feel horrified. Why are you so stupid? Mengwei smiled miserably, then closed his eyes tightly and passed out. The crisis was over, and the belief that supported her also disappeared. Xiaozhu, the young palace master. Ergu followed up and said with a worried look on his face. It's okay, I can save her. Zuyun smiled and said, you guys wait here for me, I'll come as soon as I go. After the words fell, Zuyun did not hide it in front of them again, and simply disappeared into thin air. Back at the immortal mansion, Zuyun hugged Mengwei and went straight to the bedroom. It wasn't until he put her on the magic bed and felt the pure devilish energy coming from the magic jade bed that he felt relieved. Wei, you have a good rest, I'll go to the Dazhu world to wrap things up. Returning to the universe world again, Big Dog and Ergu were still waiting where they were. Xiaozhu, you. The two of them stopped talking, full of worries.